How are you guys doing today?
Good, yeah.
Good. It's been a crazy day.
Good.
I mean it sincerely when I say thank you so much for coming in. I'm super happy to be talking to all of you guys about the film. Before we get started, I have to say that the only reason I get to be at Sundance and the only reason that Collider gets to be at Sundance is because of our sponsorships, because we have a great relationship with Kia and their new Telluride. I just want to give them a big thank you for sponsoring Collider because I really wanted to be here, and Sundance I heard is expensive. Just throwing that out there. So I just want to say a huge thank you. Jumping into why I get to talk to you guys today. You guys get to premiere tonight at Sundance. I'm sure when you were making this, you're never really sure what's going to happen, but what does it mean for all of you guys to be here premiering at Sundance?
It's amazing. Luckily, for whatever reason, Sundance has really liked my stuff over the years. I've premiered about 6 documentaries, and this will be my first scripted movie to premiere. And that Sundance seal of approval, because this is really, the film is an intelligent, layered film. It's not some gory catalog of Bundy killings. There's a real reason that we're making this film, and to come here is amazing. I mean, it's like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval for an indie film, and that's what we are.
Well, the other thing that I think is really interesting, and I think what people might not be expecting, is that this is not the movie that I think maybe people are thinking it's going to be. It's more told from your perspective and obviously there's a lot to it, but it's more about how did you not know? And there's a lot of different layers to this thing. Could you sort of talk about that aspect of the film?
Yeah, for me, part of what was so intriguing about the script and talking to Joe about Elizabeth, who I play, was the idea that this is really a story where we get to feel empathy for a victim who is still alive. Joe and I got to visit her and her daughter and ask her questions about Bundy and about their relationship, and I got to hold handwritten notes that he had written her and see photos that no one has ever seen before, and to hear her experience with this story and to feel what she went through felt so relatable. Not that I've been in her situation, but every young woman dates and goes out, and you think that you know who somebody is, and sometimes they turn out to be something different. And for us to be able to tell a story that everyone thinks they know from one perspective and actually show it from a victim's perspective and just kind of show how she was duped, for lack of better words. And I was saying actually earlier that, Joe's work, he normally physically frees the wrongfully accused. In this, he frees the victim. And it was emotional for her to finally figure out what was going on. And you really see that in the journey for her and for Bundy.
I'm curious, what for you, you're playing someone revolting, someone awful, and I'm curious, how much debate did you have on taking on this role? And was it like a big debate, you know what I mean, and how you guys talked about it?
Debate? I don't think there was never a debate. For me, I did not think, I didn't want to do it at all, really. I thought that it was, I thought I was like, any concept, whatever I'm going to read in this script is going to be too heavy-handed, gory thriller. It's going to be desperate or something. I have no idea. I don't see how this could ever work. And then I heard Joe was attached to film it, and I thought that was very interesting, considering his body of work, and he added a lot of credibility to it. And when I read the script, I knew why he wanted to do it, because it wasn't, it's not your everyday hack and slash, biopic about a serial killer. We're not following him around and seeing the mass destruction, or are we celebrating it in any way? But really taking it from the perspective of what it's like to be manipulated, as somebody who was probably the closest person to Ted Bundy ever, and also on a worldwide perspective. The whole world, the people that are really fascinated by Ted Bundy and people that lived through it, they talk about remembering the trial, and the craziest thing was that they didn't know until the very end whether he did it or not. Like, people really sincerely believed that he was a stand-up, positive, interesting, loving, good dude. And that couldn't be further from the truth. But that's the kind of magic that he had. So I think once I realized and spoke with Joe, and the cast was put together, I knew Lily was interested. I think
For you guys, I'm very curious how you guys got involved in the project, and what did you take away from reading the script?
Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Angela. I was, I think, one of the last people to sign on. So in the email, seeing all these names and seeing Joe's name, and I felt like sending the email immediately saying yes, but I was responsible and read the script very quickly. And yeah, it's a really tough subject matter, but is handled in an unexpected way. And by seeing a lot of the story through Liz's eyes, and my opportunity to play this character who is sort of trying to get her to move beyond Bundy, who has imprisoned her in his own way. You know, it's that she may not be in prison, but she is totally consumed, by his his lies and his manipulation and everything. And it's just it's a really compelling relationship they have between all these people. So it was an honor to be part of it. Angela, how did you get involved?
By the way, Haley keeps saying in these interviews he was one of the last ones to sign on, but the reality is that everyone here were my first choices, which is amazing. Like, this is my first scripted endeavor in a really long time, and for all of these actors my first choice of actors to say yes is like a filmmaker's dream come true. So you were one of the last because we had all these other issues or whatever, but just to be clear, you were my first choice for that
I
role.
really appreciate that.
Thank you, Haley.
You're welcome.
I knew Joe because we did a documentary that I was a part of. I was working on a film called The Promise, and Joe was doing a documentary about the denial of the Armenian genocide called Intent to Destroy. And I had been a fan of his work. I'd seen Paradise Lost and a lot of his other work, but really learned more about it after I met him. And I'm incredibly impressed by his work, not only beyond the film, but what he does in a social sense. He fights for innocent lives who are accused of crime. And here he did the opposite. And he presented this script to me, and I was so honored that he wanted me to be a part of it. And so the part I play here is really special because for me as a woman to be able to play that voice of reason in a lot of ways, because I think I do relate to Liz, the character. And having seen some of the footage on YouTube about Ted Bundy presenting himself as a lawyer in court, which apparently you said was the first time in history to ever happen.
That cameras were in the courtroom.
Yeah, the cameras were in the courtroom. I was astonished at how charming and manipulative he was, and how you start to question, is he really guilty? Could this guy really have done it? And so it's that search for truth, I think, not being able to see it when it's in front of you. So I think that's what the film covers.
I'm very curious, Joe. Ultimately, what you get on location, what you're filming, the editing room is the final rewrite. And I'm curious what you learned in the editing room through early screenings that impacted the finished film.
Good question. We shot a few scenes that didn't make it into the film. I think the film we filled out a lot more of some of Bundy's activities, and the film felt like in earlier cuts we were straying from the love story. And the love story to me is really important. Whether he truly loved her or not is one of the fundamental questions that drives the film and is unanswerable. But this is the one person Bundy didn't kill, even though he had the opportunity to do it. And that is the nucleus as to why I found the script fascinating and why I had to do it. Because I've spent a lot of time, as Angela so nicely, thank you, said, I've spent a lot of time on death row looking into the eyes of people who are telling me they're innocent, and you have to go through a process of understanding and believing them in order to take the case on. And I've spent, a few sleepless nights in my hotel room. Well, what if I'm being snowed? What if this is not true? And just for the record, anyone I've actually finished the film about, I believe they're innocent. But you go through this vetting process, and there's an investigative process. And the fact that you wonder if somebody is telling you the truth kind of drives what this film is about. And you need to do that through the love story, because I want the audience to take the same emotional journey that Liz takes. So even though it's Bundy at the beginning of the film, I hope people will suspend that knowledge and kind of go into Lily's POV and understand how we become seduced by this kind of sociopathic behavior. And so that love story was critical. So to answer your question, every time we strayed from the love story in the early edits, the film kind of lost some of its energy. So in the editing process, we slimmed the film down tremendously to just give it this kind of trajectory so that we're really in Lily's POV. Now, there are certain things that happen in the film that Lily is not there for, so we say it's her POV, but it's really, we're giving the audience the experience that Lily had in trusting and bonding and accepting who this person is, only to be revulsed by the truth at the end of the film. So the short answer is, anytime we walked away from the love story, the film kind of lost energy, so we tightened it up.
You obviously know a great deal about his story through all the things you've worked on. I'm curious, talk a little bit about you're trying to tell the truth, but you're also making a movie. Yeah. So how do you toe that line in terms of, you know what I mean, like balancing that fact and fiction, or is everything we're seeing on screen, you know what I mean?
Well, truth is, and this will sound maybe like heresy or something, but even a documentary is not the literal truth of a situation. Filmmaking is very subjective. The literal truth of Paradise Lost is if you were sitting in a courtroom for 6 weeks. The emotional truth of Paradise Lost is Paradise Lost, and we only use about an hour of the murder trial. So it's about finding those right moments so that you're capturing the emotional truth of a situation as opposed to the literal truth. And so that philosophy, transitioning to features, that's what I wanted to bring, was just the emotional truth of a situation. So even if you take some license, like for example, the final scene of the movie, which I don't want to reveal, didn't happen the way it happened. It happened as a phone call. And the phone call is far less dramatic than a final real-life confrontation. But the emotional truth of what occurred in that conversation, whether it's done, in person or versus a phone, you're going for the same emotional truth. So that's my philosophy anyway.
I'm curious for all the actors and also for you, before filming begins, you're looking at the script and you're seeing everything you got to do. What's the scene or maybe the moment that you were like reading the script, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this scene, this is going to suck?
Without ruining anything, it's the scene that Joe was just referencing at the end of the movie. It's a very long scene. Yeah. With a lot of
you were dreading that scene?
Yes, there were lots of monologues, lots of we were in abandoned prisons shooting, and it's just two people, and it's just a very honest scene, but it was a lot to memorize, a lot of I think I felt that way also, having spent time with Liz. You want to pay tribute to her, and not that anyone here knows how she acts or what she feels, but I got to meet her, and to play someone that's still alive, that lived through that has purposefully kept herself away from talking about this stuff, for a long time. We never wanted to in any way jeopardize, what she's kept to herself for so long. And so that scene was a real emotionally freeing moment, for my character, and it's pent up through many years. And that scene, it was just it's like a face-off of sorts, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Please tell me.
Your most dreaded scene.
My most dreaded. I don't think I didn't dread any scenes. I know that a couple of scenes towards the beginning of the movie when Ted is being like a nice guy and wooing Liz. Where those didn't come very natural. They're like, oh yeah, be slick. Ted Bundy's a real slick. I don't know how to be slick. I'm just a nerd myself. So some of that was kind of hard. There was a scene, and I have a scene with John Malkovich, and that was, I wasn't dreading it. I was definitely a little scared going into that one because he's John Malkovich. And I couldn't believe that I was there. I was pretty nervous. I'm happy that one's on film. Yeah.
Oh, for me, there was nothing I dreaded because I read the script and loved it. It was the first script that in a long time that I felt like I had to do because it deeply spoke to me. So, but I guess the whole transition to scripted, that was the more intimidating part. And thank God for my cinematographer, Brandon Trost, who did an amazing job and really kind of put his arm around me and, helped me with that transition.
By the way, I didn't mean dread as in like a negative thing. I wasn't like counting down. I was just very anxious.
Completely.
Like I'm like I totally dreaded it. No, I just was like highly anxious.
No, I didn't think you were dreading it like that. I thought you meant that like you're nervous about filming it. You're nervous.
Exactly.
Every day.
I dreaded the whole experience. No, yeah, same that Lily said. It's not like I didn't really have a choice because this was one of those films that, because of the tight schedule, I showed up in Cincinnati, had a costume fitting the next morning, and then we basically did like all of our scenes the first day. Like
slapped you day one.
Yeah, again, we had a little scuffle in the living room in that house, but it's just one of those things about acting. You just have to jump into it, and there's a lot of merit to a process where you get to rehearse for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then you get to really plot things out. And then there's merit to some things where a lot of reality and a lot of energy comes out of the high wire act of just being like, okay, we're doing it, it's happening right now. And I think that was really helpful in those scenes. And crucially, there's a scene where I talked briefly to Zac on the phone, and we had a little earpiece, or he had an earpiece, and we were actually talking on the phone, and like I felt immediately immersed in the world, all these things happening in that house. So it was fun.
Pretty awesome.
I don't think I dreaded anything. I was really nervous. Actually, I was really looking forward to doing some of the scenes because she's very different than anything I've played. But I love finding little moments in scenes, like that you don't know. There's a scene that Liz and I were doing, and Lily and I, who plays Liz, and she had some receipts on the table, and I because of the condition her character's in, I always thought I have to search for what's really going on, the things that I don't know about her. And so I found it interesting that maybe I'm reading her receipt while she's pouring herself another drink. And so I liked finding little things like that. Just a sec, that's my alarm. Thanks for...
It says interview with Collider.
Okay, great.
Like
As long as it wasn't me, we're good.
But what I look forward to was the courtroom scenes. I was really fascinated at seeing how that was going to come together because I had watched all the YouTube videos, so I was like, that's going to be so cool to see, which I'm not a part of, but I love,
The courtroom scenes were interesting because that's the only thing. There's quite a bit of that footage, and it was the first trial ever documented in that capacity and put on TV. So that we had to get the closest to real life with that one. So anytime you're shooting for something real or that really did transpire, that's where we really have to be careful with towing the line with how close we take it and our creative license. So
I was going to say
Joe's great at that.
I was going to say I could have a million other questions, but everyone over there is giving me the hook like you need to leave. So I want to be respectful and
Dude, you don't need to leave. Screw them. We love you.
Right. I appreciate that. However, I do want to be able to talk to you guys again in the future.
We shall.
And they do control the door.
Oh, never mind. Love you guys.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So I'm just going to say congrats on the movie. I think you're going to have a great night tonight. Thank you. For real.
Thanks,
Thank you
man.
very
Thanks
much.
for having us. Thank you guys.